I never thought a space heater would be the thing that finally pushed me over the edge. But here we are, sitting in my garage workshop on a freezing January morning in Boulder, Colorado, watching the HOA president lose her mind over 200 watts of electricity. My name is Connor Jackson, and I have been living in the Pinewood Estates subdivision for 3 years now. I bought my house specifically because it had a detached 2-car garage that I converted into a woodworking shop. The place is my sanctuary, where I spend most of my evenings and weekends building furniture, carving decorative pieces, and generally staying out of trouble. The problem is that Colorado winters are brutal, and working with wood in sub-zero temperatures is not just uncomfortable, it is actually dangerous. Cold wood can crack, finishes will not cure properly, and my fingers get so numb I risk cutting myself on the power tools. That is why I invested in a good infrared space heater last October. Nothing fancy, just a solid unit that keeps the temperature in my garage around 50 degrees so I can actually work without frostbite. I had an electrician come out and make sure my garage circuit could handle it, got all the proper permits from the county, and thought I was good to go. The heater cost me $400, but it was worth every penny. I could finally work on my projects year-round without my hands going numb after 20 minutes. Everything was fine until December rolled around, and Barbara Henderson, the HOA president, decided to make her monthly rounds through the neighborhood. Barbara is exactly what you would picture when someone says the word Karen. She is in her early 50s, has that speak to the manager haircut with blonde highlights, and drives a white Lexus SUV with a coexist sticker next to a Blue Lives Matter sticker, which tells you everything you need to know about her ability to see irony. She wears velour tracksuits in winter and athleisure in summer, despite the fact that I have never once seen her actually exercise. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was in my garage working on a cherry wood coffee table for my sister's birthday. I had the space heater running, my safety glasses on, and I was carefully running a piece through my table saw when I heard the knock. Actually, it was not really a knock. It was more like someone was trying to break down the door with their fist. I shut off the saw, pulled off my ear protection, and opened the side door of the garage. Barbara stood there in her purple velour tracksuit, holding her phone like she was about to take a picture of a crime scene. Her face was already that particular shade of red that meant she had worked herself up before even arriving. "Connor Jackson," she said, as if she was serving me with papers. "I need to speak with you about a serious violation." I wiped sawdust off my hands with a rag. "What violation?" She pointed past me into the garage. "That space heater. It is a fire hazard and a violation of the HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Section 12, subsection 4 clearly states that no auxiliary heating devices are permitted in detached structures." I blinked at her. "Barbara, that is not what that section says. I read the entire CC and R packet when I bought the house. That section refers to outdoor fire pits and chimneys. It has nothing to do with electric heaters inside a garage." Her eyes narrowed. "I am the HOA president, Connor. I think I know what our rules say better than you do." "Then you should probably reread them," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "because I am not violating anything. I got permits from the county for the electrical work. Everything is up to code." "The county does not govern HOA rules," she snapped. "I am ordering you to remove that heater immediately, or I will have no choice but to issue fines." I felt my jaw tighten. "Barbara, it is 20 degrees outside. I use this garage as a workshop. I cannot work out here without some kind of heat source." "Then work inside your house like a normal person," she said. "Or do not work. I do not care. But that heater is a liability and I will not have it in my neighborhood, her neighborhood. That phrase right there told me everything I needed to know about how this conversation was going to go. I took a deep breath and tried one more time. Look, I am happy to show you the electrical inspection paperwork. I am happy to show you the manufacturer safety documentation. This heater is designed for garage use. It has automatic shut-off features, tip-over protection, and it is rated for this square footage. There is literally nothing unsafe about it. Barbara crossed her arms. I do not need to see your paperwork. I need you to remove it. You have until Monday, or you will receive a fine of $100 per day until it is gone. Before I could respond, she turned and walked back to her Lexus, climbed in and drove off. I stood there in the cold air coming through the open door, absolutely stunned. In 3 years of living here, I had dealt with Barbara's petty nonsense before. She had sent me a violation notice because my trash cans were visible from the street on a non-trash day, even though it was literally trash day, and the truck just had not come yet. She had tried to fine my neighbor for having his car parked in his own driveway for more than 24 hours because she claimed it made the neighborhood look like a used car lot. But this was a new level of absurd. I went back inside my house and pulled out my copy of the CC and Articus. I read Section 12, subsection 4 3 times. It said, and I quote, "No open flame heating devices, fire pits, chimeneas, or similar outdoor recreational fire features shall be maintained in a condition visible from the street or adjacent properties without prior written approval from the Architectural Review Committee." Nothing about space heaters, nothing about garages, nothing about indoor heating at all. I grabbed my phone and took photos of the relevant pages. Then I photographed the space heater, the electrical box, and the county permit sticker the electrician had put on my breaker panel. If Barbara wanted to play stupid games, she was going to win stupid prizes. Monday came and went. I kept my heater running because I was not violating any actual rules, and I was not going to freeze just because Barbara had decided to go on a power trip. Wednesday, I got an official-looking letter in my mailbox. It was on HOA letterhead and informed me that I was being fined $100 per day starting Monday for violation of Section 12, subsection 4. The letter also informed me that if the violation was not corrected within 30 days, the HOA could place a lien on my property. I called the phone number listed on the letter. Barbara answered on the second ring. "This is Barbara Henderson, HOA president." "Barbara, this is Connor Jackson. I just got your letter about the fines, and I am telling you right now that I am not paying them. I am not in violation of any HOA rules. The board has determined that you are in violation," she said in that smug tone people use when they think they have all the power. "If you disagree, you can request a hearing with the board, but the fines will continue to accrue until the violation is corrected." "Fine. I want a hearing." The next board meeting is not until March 15th. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. March 15th. That is more than 2 months away. You are going to fine me $100 a day for 2 months before I even get a chance to present my case. Those are the rules, Connor. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to violate HOA policy. She hung up. I stood in my kitchen, holding my phone, and I realized something important. Barbara was not doing this because she actually thought I was violating a rule. She was doing this because she could, or at least because she thought she could. The HOA in Pinewood Estates had 7 board members, but in practice, Barbara ran everything. Most of the other board members were either too busy or too intimidated to question her, and she had been president for 6 years running because nobody else wanted to deal with the headache of the position. But here is the thing about people who abuse small amounts of power. They always overreach eventually. And when they do, they usually make mistakes. I spent that evening researching Colorado HOA law. It turns out that HOAs in Colorado are subject to something called the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act, or CCOA. Among other things, CCOA requires that HOAs follow their own governing documents, provide proper notice before fines, and allow homeowners to contest violations before penalties accrue. The letter I received did not mention any of that. It just said I was being fined, effective immediately, with no opportunity to present evidence or contest the claim until March. I drafted a formal letter citing the relevant sections of CCOA, attached photos of the CC and R pages, the space heater, and my county permits, and I sent it certified mail to Barbara at the HOA address listed on the letterhead. I also sent copies to every other board member whose address I could find in the neighborhood directory. In the letter, I clearly explained that I was not in violation of any rule, that the fine was improper under both the CC and Artiques and Colorado law, and that if the HOA continued to pursue this, I would have no choice but to seek legal remedy. 2 days later, Barbara showed up at my house again. This time it was evening, and I was actually inside making dinner. She rang the doorbell repeatedly until I answered. "You think you are clever, do not you?" she said before I could even say hello. Her face was red again, and she was waving a copy of my letter in her hand. Sending this to the entire board, trying to make me look bad. I am not trying to make you look bad, Barbara. I am trying to follow the actual rules. You are the one who is ignoring them. "I am enforcing community standards," she said. "Something has to maintain property values around here, and if people like you just do whatever you want, this whole neighborhood will go downhill. People like me. Barbara, I am heating my garage so I can work in it. I am not running a meth lab or hosting cockfights. It is a space heater. It is a fire hazard, and I am not going to let you burn down this neighborhood because you are too cheap to work inside where it is warm." That was when I realized something. Barbara was not actually concerned about fire hazards or rules or community standards. She was mad that someone was questioning her authority. In her mind, she was the queen of Pinewood Estates, and I was a peasant who needed to learn his place. "Barbara, I am not removing the heater. If you want to keep fining me, go ahead. I will see you in court, and I will make sure the judge sees exactly what you are doing here." She stepped closer, and for a second I thought she was actually going to try to push past me into my house. "You are not going to win this, Connor. I have been running this HOA for 6 years. I know how to deal with troublemakers." "Then I guess we will see what happens," I said, and I closed the door. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but Barbara Henderson was not the type of person to let things go. Over the next week, I received 3 more violation notices. One claimed that my garbage cans were visible from the street, even though they were in the exact same place they had been for 3 years. One claimed that my lawn had weeds, despite the fact that it was January and everything was covered in snow. And one claimed that I had parked my truck in my driveway for more than 48 hours, which was apparently against a rule I had never heard of and could not find in any of the HOA documents. Each violation came with another $100 per day fine. On paper, I was now being charged $600 a day for various made-up infractions. Barbara was trying to bury me in fines, hoping I would either back down or actually end up with a lien on my property. But here is what Barbara did not know. I work as a project manager for a tech company. I deal with contracts, compliance issues, and documentation for a living. I am very, very good at keeping records and building cases. Every violation notice she sent me, I photographed, scanned, and saved with timestamps. I took daily photos of my property showing that the alleged violations did not exist. I documented every interaction with Barbara, every phone call, every piece of mail. I was building a file that would make a lawyer very happy. I also started talking to my neighbors. It turned out I was not the first person Barbara had targeted with her nonsense. My next-door neighbor, a guy named Marcus, told me that Barbara had tried to fine him 2 years ago because his house numbers were the wrong font. The guy across the street, David, said Barbara had threatened to fine him because his Christmas lights were up 3 days past the HOA deadline of January 5th. And my neighbor, 2 doors down, a retired school teacher named Patricia, said Barbara had actually placed a lien on her property 5 years ago over a dispute about fence height, and Patricia had to hire a lawyer to get it removed. The common thread in all these stories was that Barbara used the threat of fines and liens to bully people into submission. Most people, faced with hundreds of dollars in daily fines and the possibility of losing their home, would back down and give Barbara whatever she wanted. It was legal extortion dressed up in HOA bureaucracy. But I was not most people. And I was getting angry. On January 23rd, I received another letter from the HOA. This one informed me that due to my continued violations and failure to pay accrued fines, which were now allegedly over $8,000, the board was moving forward with placing a lien on my property. The letter gave me 10 days to pay in full or enter into a payment plan, or the lien would be filed with the county. That was when I called a lawyer. Her name was Teresa Walsh, and she specialized in HOA disputes. I found her through an online search, and her website was full of testimonials from people who had fought their HOAs and won. I made an appointment for the next day. Teresa's office was in downtown Boulder, in a renovated building near the courthouse. She was probably in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, and she listened to my entire story without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "This is one of the more blatant cases I have seen in a while," she said. "Your HOA president is violating about 6 different sections of CCOA, and she is exposing the HOA to significant liability. Can she actually put a lien on my property? She can try, but it would not hold up. You are not in violation of any legitimate rule. The fines were improperly assessed, and you were not given proper notice or opportunity to contest. If she files a lien, we can get it removed, and then we can go after the HOA for damages." "What kind of damages?" "Attorney fees, court costs, and possibly punitive damages for harassment and abuse of authority. Colorado courts take this stuff seriously. HOAs have power, but they are not allowed to just make up rules and fine people at will." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "So what do I do?" "First, you are going to send a cease and desist letter to the HOA. I will draft it. It is going to clearly state that they are violating Colorado law, that their fines are improper, and that if they proceed with the lien, you will pursue legal action. Second, you are going to request an emergency hearing with the board under CCOA, which they are required to grant within 14 days. Third, if they do not back down, we are going to file a lawsuit." "How much is this going to cost me?" Teresa shrugged. "I charge $250 an hour, but in HOA cases, if we win, the HOA has to pay your legal fees. So in the end, it would not cost you anything. In fact, you might even come out ahead if we pursue damages." I hired her on the spot. Teresa drafted the cease and desist letter that afternoon, and I sent it certified mail to Barbara and the entire HOA board. The letter was 6 pages long and cited about 20 different legal violations. It very politely explained that the HOA needed to withdraw all fines, stop harassing me, and follow its own governing documents, or face a lawsuit that would likely cost the HOA tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees and damages. I also formally requested an emergency hearing under CCOA, which meant the board had to meet with me within 2 weeks, not in March. 3 days later, I got a phone call from a number I did not recognize. I answered, and a man's voice said, "Connor Jackson, this is Robert Mills. I am on the HOA board with Barbara Henderson. I just got your lawyer's letter, and I need to talk to you." Robert, it turned out, was one of the board members who had been mostly silent while Barbara ran the show. He was a retired accountant, and he actually understood the legal exposure the HOA was facing. "Look, I am going to be straight with you," he said. "Most of the board had no idea Barbara was doing any of this. She handles the day-to-day stuff, and we just vote on the big things. But this space heater thing, none of us knew about it until you sent that first letter, and these other violation notices you are getting. We did not approve those either. So what are you saying?" "I am saying that Barbara has been acting unilaterally. She does not have board authority to issue these fines or to threaten a lien. I have been going through the HOA records, and she has been doing this kind of thing for years. She fines people. They pay because they are scared, and the money goes into the HOA account. But the board never actually votes on most of these enforcement actions." I sat down. "So she has been running a scam." "I would not call it a scam exactly, but it is definitely not legal. I talked to 3 other board members today, and we are all on the same page. We are going to call an emergency board meeting, and we are going to resolve this. But I need you to hold off on the lawsuit for now. Give us a chance to fix this internally." "What about Barbara?" There was a long pause. "Let us deal with Barbara." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for February 2nd. In the meantime, I kept my space heater running. It was still freezing outside, and I was not going to sit in a cold garage just to appease Barbara's power trip. I also kept documenting everything, just in case the board meeting did not go the way Robert promised. On February 1st, the day before the meeting, Barbara showed up at my house one more time. It was evening, and I was in my garage working on a set of dining chairs. I heard her car pull up, and then she was pounding on the door again. I opened it, and she looked worse than I had ever seen her. Her hair was messy, her eyes were red, and she looked like she had not slept in days. "You have ruined everything," she said. Her voice was shaking. "You and your stupid lawyer. Do you have any idea what you have done?" "I defended myself against improper fines," I said calmly. "That is what I have done. The board is turning on me. People who have been my friends for years are acting like I am some kind of criminal. All because you could not follow a simple rule. It was not a rule, Barbara. You made it up." "I was protecting this neighborhood," she shouted. "Do you know how hard I have worked to keep property values up, to keep things nice? And people like you do not care. You just do whatever you want, and you expect everyone else to deal with it. Barbara, I have been a good neighbor. I keep my property clean, I follow the actual rules, and I mind my own business. You are the one who decided to make up violations and harass me over a space heater." She stepped closer, and I could smell alcohol on her breath. "Give me the heater." I blinked. "What? Give me the space heater. I need it. My garage is freezing, and I cannot afford to buy one right now because I have been spending all my time dealing with HOA stuff. If you give me the heater, I will drop all the fines. We can forget this whole thing." I stared at her. This whole situation, all of this insanity, and it came down to the fact that Barbara wanted my space heater. She had probably seen it in my garage during her inspection, decided she wanted one for herself, and then tried to bully me into giving it to her by making up violations. When that did not work, she doubled down and tried to bury me in fines. And now, faced with losing her position and possibly being sued, she was drunk and desperate and literally asking me to hand over my property. "Barbara, go home. You are drunk and you need to leave my property." "I am not leaving until you give me what I want," she said, and she actually tried to push past me into the garage. I blocked her path and pulled out my phone. "Barbara, if you do not leave right now, I am calling the police." "You would not dare." I started dialing 911. She stared at me for a few seconds, and then she turned and stumbled back to her car. I watched her drive away, weaving slightly, and I immediately called the non-emergency police line to report a drunk driver. I gave them her license plate number and the direction she was heading. I do not know if they caught her or not, but I figured it was better than letting her potentially hurt someone. The next evening, I walked into the Pinewood Estates HOA meeting room, which was actually just the community clubhouse near the neighborhood entrance. There were about 15 people there. The 7 board members, my lawyer Teresa, a lawyer representing the HOA, and a handful of homeowners who had apparently heard about the drama and wanted to watch. Barbara was already seated at the head of the table, looking composed and professional in a navy blue blazer. If I had not seen her drunk and desperate less than 24 hours ago, I might have been intimidated. But now, I just saw her for what she was, a bully who had finally been called out. Robert Mills started the meeting by reading a prepared statement. He explained that the board had conducted a review of recent enforcement actions and had discovered that several violations had been issued without proper board authorization. He then moved to immediately rescind all fines against me, which the board voted to approve 6-1. Barbara was the only no vote. Barbara's face turned red, but she kept her composure. For about 5 minutes, then it was my turn to speak. Teresa had prepared a statement laying out exactly what Barbara had done, the laws she had violated, and the damages I had suffered. I read it calmly, citing dates, times, and specific incidents. When I got to the part about Barbara showing up drunk and demanding my space heater, several board members gasped. Barbara stood up. "That is a lie. I never said that." "I have a witness," I said. "My neighbor Marcus was in his driveway and heard the entire conversation. I also have security camera footage." I did not actually have security camera footage because I did not have a security camera, but Barbara did not know that. Her face went pale. The HOA's lawyer, a tired-looking man in his 60s, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Henderson, I think it would be best if you resigned from the board, effective immediately. The HOA cannot afford the liability you have created." "I am not resigning," Barbara said. "I have done nothing wrong. I have dedicated 6 years of my life to this neighborhood, and this is how you repay me." Robert spoke up. "Barbara, you issued thousands of dollars in improper fines. You harassed homeowners. You acted without board authority. And now we are facing a potential lawsuit that could cost the HOA a fortune. You have to go." "Fine," she spat. "Fine, you want me gone, I am gone. But do not come crying to me when this neighborhood falls apart without someone to enforce standards." She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The remaining board members sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Robert turned to me. "Mr. Jackson, on behalf of the board, I apologize for everything you have been through. We are going to issue a formal letter rescinding all fines and violations. We are also going to review all of Mrs. Henderson's enforcement actions from the past several years to make sure no one else has been improperly targeted. If you are willing to accept our apology and drop any legal action, we would appreciate it." I looked at Teresa. She gave me a small nod. I accept your apology, and I am willing to drop any legal action as long as the board commits to following proper procedures going forward. Agreed, Robert said, and the other board members nodded. The meeting ended, and I walked back to my truck feeling like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Barbara was gone. The fines were gone. I could keep my space heater and work in my garage without being harassed, but the story does not quite end there. 2 weeks later, I was in my garage on a Saturday morning, space heater humming away, working on a bookshelf for my living room. I heard a knock at the door, and when I opened it, I found 2 police officers standing there. "Connor Jackson," one of them asked. "That is me. We need to ask you some questions about Barbara Henderson." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "She has been arrested for embezzlement. We are talking to everyone who has had recent interactions with her." It turned out that when Robert and the other board members started reviewing the HOA financial records, they found some serious discrepancies. Over the past 6 years, Barbara had collected over $80,000 in fines from various homeowners. Most of that money had gone into the HOA account, as it should have, but about $22,000 was missing. After a forensic audit, they discovered that Barbara had been writing checks to herself for administrative expenses and enforcement costs that were never approved by the board and never properly documented. She had been using her position as HOA president to not only bully people, but also to steal from the community. I gave my statement to the police, explaining everything that had happened with the space heater, the fines, and Barbara's behavior. I also provided copies of all my documentation, which apparently helped establish a pattern of abuse of authority. Several other homeowners came forward with similar stories, and the case against Barbara got stronger. The legal process took months. Barbara initially tried to claim that the checks were legitimate reimbursements for expenses she had incurred on behalf of the HOA, but she could not produce receipts or documentation for most of them. In June, she pleaded guilty to theft and was sentenced to 18 months in prison, though the judge suspended all but 60 days of the sentence. She also had to pay full restitution to the HOA and perform 200 hours of community service. The local news picked up the story, and for a few weeks, Pinewood Estates was famous as the neighborhood where the HOA president went to jail for stealing money and harassing homeowners over space heaters. It was embarrassing for everyone involved, but it also led to some positive changes. The HOA board rewrote the enforcement procedures to require full board votes on any fines over $50. They also implemented a formal appeals process that did not require waiting months for a hearing. And they elected new leadership that actually seemed interested in serving the community rather than wielding power over it. As for me, I kept my space heater running all through that winter, and the next winter, and every winter since. My garage stays at a comfortable 50 degrees, and I spend most of my free time out there building furniture, working on projects, and enjoying my hobby without freezing my fingers off. I never saw Barbara again after that board meeting. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved out of Pinewood Estates before her sentencing, selling her house at a loss just to get away from the place. Part of me felt bad for her. She had clearly put a lot of her identity into being HOA president, and when that power was taken away, she had nothing left. But a bigger part of me remembered how she had tried to ruin my life over a space heater, how she had harassed and stolen from my neighbors, and I figured she got exactly what she deserved. The whole experience taught me something important about people and power. Some people get a little bit of authority, and they use it to help others, to make things better, to serve their community. And some people get that same authority and they use it to make themselves feel important, to bully people, to take what they want. Barbara was the second type, and she got away with it for years because most people were too afraid or too tired to fight back. But all it took was one person refusing to back down, documenting everything, and getting the right legal help to bring the whole house of cards crashing down. I am glad I was that person. I am glad I kept my space heater running even when Barbara threatened me with thousands of dollars in fines. And I am glad I did not let her intimidate me into giving up something that was rightfully mine and that I needed to pursue my hobby. Sometimes standing up to a bully is not about the thing they are trying to take from you. It is about refusing to let them have power over you. Barbara thought she could force me to give her my space heater, to pay bogus fines, to bow to her authority just because she had a title. But titles do not mean anything if the person holding them does not deserve the respect that comes with leadership. These days, Pinewood Estates is a much quieter place. The new HOA board sends out monthly newsletters instead of violation notices. They organize community events instead of looking for reasons to fine people. And when someone has a question or concern, they actually listen instead of issuing threats. I still see some of the board members around the neighborhood. Robert Mills lives 3 streets over, and we have become friendly. He stops by my garage sometimes to see what I am working on, and I have built a few pieces of furniture for him at cost. He told me once that standing up to Barbara was the best thing that could have happened to the neighborhood, because it forced everyone to pay attention to what was actually going on with the HOA. My neighbor Marcus, the one who witnessed Barbara's drunk visit to my garage, also became a good friend. We have a running joke about space heaters now. Every time winter comes around, he texts me a picture of his garage thermometer just to make sure I am keeping warm. It is silly, but it reminds me that sometimes the most absurd conflicts can lead to the best outcomes. The incident with Barbara also made me more aware of HOA issues in general. I joined a couple of online forums where people share their HOA horror stories, and I was shocked by how common this kind of abuse is. There are thousands of stories out there about HOA board members who go on power trips, make up rules, issue improper fines, and generally make people's lives miserable. In some cases, people actually lose their homes because they cannot afford to fight the HOA or pay the accumulating fines. I started volunteering some of my time to help people in those situations. I am not a lawyer, but I know how to document things, how to research laws, and how to build a case. I have helped 3 other homeowners in Colorado fight improper HOA fines, and in each case, we won. It feels good to use what I learned from my own experience to help other people who are facing the same kind of bullying I faced. One of the cases I helped with was particularly satisfying. A woman named Jennifer was being fined by her HOA because her daughter's play structure in the backyard was allegedly too tall and violated height restrictions. The HOA president, another middle-aged woman with too much time and not enough actual problems in her life, was demanding that Jennifer tear down the play structure or pay $5,000 in fines. I helped Jennifer pull the HOA records and found that the height restriction only applied to fences and permanent structures, not temporary play equipment. We also found that the HOA president herself had a gazebo in her backyard that exceeded the height limits and had never been approved. When we presented this information at a board meeting, complete with photos and measurements, the president resigned on the spot and the fines were dropped. It turns out that people who abuse power usually have skeletons in their own closets, and they really do not like it when someone shines a light on their hypocrisy. Looking back on the whole space heater saga, I realize how easily it could have gone differently. If I had not kept detailed records, if I had not found a good lawyer, if I had not had supportive neighbors willing to back me up, Barbara might have actually succeeded in putting a lien on my house. I might have been forced to pay thousands of dollars in bogus fines just to protect my property. And Barbara would have continued to bully and steal from other homeowners for years to come. But I did keep records. I did find a good lawyer. I did have supportive neighbors. And because of that, not only did I protect myself, but I also helped expose a pattern of corruption that had been going on for years. The $22,000 Barbara stole was returned to the HOA and used to make actual improvements to the neighborhood, like fixing the community pool and repaving some of the streets. So, in a weird way, Barbara's greed ended up benefiting everyone, just not in the way she intended. There is something deeply satisfying about beating a bully at their own game. Barbara thought she could use the HOA rules as a weapon against me, but those same rules, when properly applied and understood, became my shield and eventually her downfall. She thought she was untouchable because she had been getting away with this behavior for years, but all it took was one person who was willing to read the fine print and stand their ground. My sister got her cherry wood coffee table for her birthday, and it turned out beautifully. She still has it in her living room, and every time I see it, I think about how close I came to not finishing it because Barbara wanted to force me to work in a freezing garage. The table is solid and well crafted, built with patience and attention to detail, much like the case I built against Barbara. Both required careful planning, precise execution, and a refusal to take shortcuts even when things got difficult. I finished that set of dining chairs I was working on when the police came to interview me about Barbara. They are in my dining room now, and I use them every day. Each one took about 20 hours to build, and I did all of the work in my garage with my space heater running, keeping the temperature comfortable enough that I could focus on getting the joinery perfect and the finish smooth. That is what this whole thing was really about in the end. It was not about defying authority or causing trouble. It was about being able to pursue my hobby in comfort and safety. It was about not letting someone else dictate what I could and could not do in my own property when I was not actually breaking any rules. It was about the principle that power has to be exercised responsibly, and when it is not, people have the right to fight back. Barbara never understood that. She thought being HOA president meant she could do whatever she wanted, take whatever she wanted, and nobody would dare challenge her. She was wrong, and that mistake cost her everything: her position, her reputation, her freedom for a time, and her home in the neighborhood she claimed to care so much about. I kept my space heater, and I let it run all winter long, every winter. And somewhere, wherever Barbara ended up, I hope she learned that you cannot bully people into giving you what you want, no matter what title you hold or how many threatening letters you send. Because eventually, someone is going to stand up, document everything, and make you face the consequences of your actions. The garage is warm right now as I sit here on a cold January evening, working on a new project. It is a rocking chair for my nephew, who is about to be born in a few weeks. The space heater hums quietly in the corner, keeping the temperature at a steady 52 degrees. Outside, it is 15 degrees and snowing, but in here, I am comfortable and focused on my work. This is what I fought for. Not just the heater itself, but the right to use my property the way I want to use it, as long as I am following the actual rules and not causing harm to anyone. It is a simple thing, really, but it matters. All of our rights matter, even the small ones, even the ones that seem trivial. Because if we let people take the small ones without a fight, eventually they will come for the bigger ones too. Barbara tried to take my space heater. She failed, and in the process, she lost everything while I kept what was mine and helped make my neighborhood a better place. That is not revenge. That is just justice, served cold in a warm garage on a winter night in Colorado. The rocking chair is coming along nicely. The wood is a beautiful maple that I have been saving for a special project, and the joints are fitting together perfectly. My nephew will use this chair for years, maybe even pass it down to his own kids someday, and it will be a reminder that good things take time, patience, and the willingness to stand your ground when someone tries to push you around. I have learned a lot from this experience. I have learned that HOA rules are not as absolute as board members sometimes pretend they are. I have learned that Colorado law provides real protections for homeowners against HOA abuse. I have learned that documentation is everything in a legal dispute. And I have learned that sometimes the person who seems to have all the power is actually standing on very shaky ground, and all it takes is one good push to bring them down. But most importantly, I have learned that standing up for yourself is not just about winning. It is about refusing to be a victim, about maintaining your dignity and your rights, even when someone with a title and a stack of threatening letters tries to take them away. Barbara thought she could make me back down by escalating the fines, by threatening a lien, by showing up at my house and demanding what was mine. But every time she escalated, I matched her with documentation, legal action, and an absolute refusal to give in to bullying. In the end, she had no power over me except what I was willing to give her, and I gave her nothing. The neighborhood is quiet tonight. Most people are inside, staying warm, going about their lives. The drama with Barbara is old news now, a story people sometimes bring up at community events but mostly have moved past. The new HOA board is competent and fair, and for the most part, people forget that the HOA even exists, which is exactly how it should be. An HOA should maintain common areas and enforce reasonable rules that actually protect property values and quality of life. It should not be a tool for petty tyrants to exercise power over their neighbors. I finish sanding one of the rocker arms and hold it up to the light, checking for any rough spots. It is smooth and perfectly shaped, exactly what I was aiming for. In a few more weeks, this chair will be done, and it will be one of the best pieces I have ever made. And I will have made it in comfort, in my warm garage with my space heater running, because I refuse to let Barbara Henderson or anyone else tell me I could not. That is the real victory here. Not that Barbara went to jail, though that was certainly satisfying. Not that the fines were dropped, though that saved me thousands of dollars. The real victory is that I am sitting here right now, on a cold winter night, doing exactly what I want to do in exactly the way I want to do it, and nobody can stop me because I am not breaking any actual rules. Barbara demanded my space heater. She tried every trick she could think of to force me to give it up or at least to stop using it. She made up violations, issued illegal fines, threatened my property with a lien, and even showed up drunk to demand I hand it over. But through all of that, I kept my heater running. I let it hum away in the corner of my garage, keeping me warm while she froze in her own anger and desperation and eventual downfall. And when spring came and the weather warmed up and I did not need the heater anymore, I unplugged it, cleaned it, and stored it safely for the next winter. And when that next winter came, I plugged it back in and kept right on working. And I will keep doing that every winter for as long as I own this house, because it is mine, and I earned the right to use it by standing up for myself when it mattered most. Barbara is gone now, moved away to wherever people go when they have burned all their bridges and destroyed their own reputation. I do not know what she is doing or whether she ever thinks about the space heater that became the symbol of her downfall. But I think about it sometimes, when I am out here in my garage, working on a project, staying warm despite the Colorado cold. I think about how a simple household appliance became the line I refuse to let anyone cross. I think about how Barbara's greed and need for control led her to make increasingly desperate and illegal choices, until she finally went too far and got caught. And I think about how satisfying it is to know that while she tried to take what was mine, I not only kept it, but used it to help bring her corruption to light. The space heater is running right now, same as it has been for hours, same as it will be tomorrow and the next day and all through this winter. It is just a machine, a metal box with heating elements and a fan, but it represents something bigger. It represents the right to say no to unreasonable demands, to stand up to bullies, to protect what is yours, and to refuse to be intimidated by people who think a title gives them unlimited power. Barbara Henderson tried to take my space heater, and she thought she could use the HOA as a weapon to force me into submission. But she was wrong about me, wrong about the law, and wrong about how far she could push before someone pushed back. And in the end, while I kept my heater running all winter long, she was the one who ended up freezing, alone, without power, without her position, without the respect she thought she commanded. That is the story of how a Karen demanded my space heater for my garage, and how I let her freeze while I kept mine running all winter. It is a story about standing up to bullies, about knowing your rights, about refusing to back down, and about how the smallest battles can sometimes have the biggest consequences. My space heater still works perfectly. My garage is still warm, and Barbara Henderson is nothing but a cautionary tale about what happens when you abuse the little bit of power you are given. I would not change a thing about how it all went down, except maybe I would have called the police on her the first time she showed up drunk instead of the second time. But we live and learn, and the important thing is that justice was served, the neighborhood is better off, and I can work on my projects in comfort all winter long. And really, what more could anyone ask for?